Matt Rhule has the Huskers ranked, but the boogeyman awaits.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, welcome in. It is Sunday night. We are coming at you with a special edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. This will also serve as our Monday episode as we get ready to hear from Matt Rhule on Monday at his normal, everything is fine press conference at the Hawks Championship Center ahead of Nebraska at Minnesota. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. And, well, it happened. We discussed this situation on Saturday night during our reaction pod after Nebraska beat Maryland 34-31. Penn State, 3 weeks removed from being ranked third nationally, lost a third consecutive game on Saturday at home against Northwestern. And Sunday, the school fired James Franklin as coach after 11-plus seasons. And on cue, Matt Rhule, depending on who you listen to, is either the number one candidate for this job or a coach that Penn State needs to stay far, far away from. Where do you fall on this, Connor?
Well, I mean, first of all, can we talk about how crazy life comes at you fast?
Yes, we can.
I mean, like, first of all, for Penn State, 2 weeks ago, 15 days ago, they're playing in the biggest game in college football, and they lose in overtime to Oregon at home. And then over the next 2 weeks, they take a cross-country trip and lose to UCLA, shockingly, and then lose at home to Penn State. And then to Northwestern. And then one day after that, James Franklin's tenure is over. I mean, I thought they probably would have a decision to make after the season. I mean, that came up today, and I thought, whoa, we're really going for it here. So that's crazy. And then obviously, you know, like you said, Matt Rhule is a name to mention right away with the ties to the athletic director, and then of course the university as well. So yeah, let's talk about it.
If you just woke up from a coma after like 3 years, Matt Rhule, the Nebraska coach, is a Penn State alum, played for Joe Paterno, was a walk-on linebacker. And it's not an exaggeration to say that one of his best friends in the world is Pat Kraft, the Penn State athletic director. They worked together at Temple. Kraft was the athletic director at Temple when Matt Rhule was the head coach there from 2013 to 2015. And they stayed in touch. I've talked to Pat Kraft multiple times. He's very accessible, much like Matt Rhule. When you see him at Big Ten Media Days, he comes up to you and shakes your hand, says hello. I've had conversations on the record, off the record about Matt Rhule. He's also a good friend of Troy Danitz. They were athletic directors together in the American Conference when Dannon was at Tulane. They've worked together when Troy Dannon took the job, when Trev Alberts left Nebraska and Troy Dannon was interested in Nebraska. It was Pat Kraft who connected Matt Rhule and Troy Dannon so that the two of them could get to know each other a little bit more. They had a mutual friend in Pat Kraft, and Rhule and Dannon knew each other just a bit from maybe some conference meetings or something like that back in their days in the American. And Kraft was more than happy in March of 2024 to talk about Rhule, who he called a brother of his, and Dannon, another good friend. So I don't really know how that plays into the dynamic of this. I don't know if Pat Kraft will go after Matt Rhule. Do you go after your buddy's coach? I suppose you do. It's a cutthroat business, and if it's somebody that you want and think that you need, then you do it. And it's up to Troy Dannon to keep him. But the big question is, does Pat Kraft even want Matt Rhule? And does Matt Rhule even want Penn State? I've been on record on this show in saying that I do not think this will happen. I did not think we would be having this conversation in October of 2025. But I've said that I do not think this will happen. I do not think that Matt Rhule is destined to be the head coach at Penn State. I don't think this is his dream job. But hey, things change and people can be persuasive, and we don't know where this is going to go over the weeks ahead.
Yeah, and every time we've talked about it here on this show, you said exactly that, right? Like I just don't see it, and I've seen a lot of that today, and there's just no way that I could tell you that with any sort of certainty. I absolutely, Matt Rhule has roots down in Nebraska, and he loves it here, and all of those things. And if he were to leave Nebraska for Penn State, it might not be that much of a reflection on Nebraska as a place, although people would take it hard and all that stuff. That's a conversation for
the sky would be falling.
But man, like, yeah, this seems like a possibility at the very least. So I cannot in any way with any certain terms tell you that this is not going to happen. I've been paying attention to some of the stuff coming out of Penn State in the immediate aftermath. We're taping this on Sunday evening at around 7:00. So just so you know, if anything's changed by the time you're listening to this tomorrow, because it might. We're in silly season.
We'll put it up tonight. We'll put it up Sunday night. The stuff from the reaction pod is old at this point. So yeah.
But I've listened to a lot of that stuff and read a lot of that, and Matt Rhule's name absolutely comes up. Signetti is the first one, for the record, depending on who you listen to. So for some people, it's Rhule. So I think that this is something that absolutely and definitively bears watching. And I'm certain that Matt Rhule will get asked about it tomorrow at his Monday press conference.
Yes. He may not even have to get asked about it. He may come out with a prepared statement about this and talk about it for 7 or 8 minutes. And
I don't expect him to shut it down, for the record. I don't think that he could. I don't think he could be up there and be like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. I think he will say something along the lines of, I love it here, and do that thing.
Not unless Troy Dannon's going to walk into the room with him and they're going to announce a contract extension, which would be awfully fast. Would be awfully fast to do that. But Nebraska is 5-1. Dannon was going to go down that road, I think, regardless this year, if Nebraska put itself in position to show considerable progress from year 2 to year 3 for Matt Rhule. He's paid $8.5 million this year, and that's going up in the years to come, up through the 2030 season when his contract is set to expire. And I think Dannon would want to make him one of the top 10 paid coaches in the country this year, whether the Penn State job was open or not, as long as Rhule got himself in a position to, say, win 8 or 9 games this season, which looks very doable at this point as Nebraska closes the first half at 5-1. There are just two very different schools of thought. There's one that says, and I know Matt Rhule certainly is aware of this kind of thinking, that going to coach at your alma mater presents problems that don't exist for any person in any job other than doing just that. And he followed a coach who experienced the worst of it. And you can 100% believe that Matt Rhule knows what Scott Frost, and some of this was brought on by himself. And it's not to say that Matt would in any way relive what at Penn State, what Scott Frost went through at Nebraska, but some of the stuff is just going to be there no matter what if you're coaching at your alma mater. And you're talking about knowing people who were in place and being in a position to have to let them down at times, no matter what. And it can leave an awful taste in your mouth. You don't want to go and fail at the place where you built yourself up as a coach. And I don't know how heavily that would weigh in the mind of Matt Rhule if it comes down to a situation where he even has a decision, if Pat Kraft even wants him. But it might. Coaches don't generally say, well, I'm afraid to fail. That's not generally in their DNA, but it's in the back of your mind, and you may have decided, if you're someone in Matt Rhule's spot, that you didn't want to do this years ago.
Yeah. There's a lot there, and there's certainly a lot on the table. So Yeah, it's going to be at the very least a talking point. I think, like you said, Mitch, Rhule will have a bunch of people around him or here in Nebraska who will caution him of that, right? who will say, "Hey, look, man, it's not all sunshine and rainbows," and
He
like
knows.
he knows 100%.
He's 50 years old. He's been around. He knows. He's seen it on in multiple places. I did find and I turned on the radio in my car this afternoon. A national show on I think it was on ESPN. That had to have been because it was Pete Thamel on the show, and Pete broke the story of Franklin's firing, and Pete also tends to break stories that involve Matt Rhule, and he was asked right off the top whose name it needs to be known in this, and he said the number one person you have to think about, at least to come into the conversation, is Matt Rhule. Now, he's not saying that Matt Rhule is a candidate or he expects Matt Rhule to take the job or he expects Matt Rhule to want the job, but he just said you have to think about that name. So there's that logic from an educated person on this subject. And then I see this from Adam Brenneman, who's a former Penn State star and is in the media now. And he says, my short list: Kurt Signetti, Marcus Freeman, Alex Golish, Brent Key, Dabo Sweeney, Lane Kiffin, Dan Mullen, Clark Lee, Ryan Silverfeld, John Gruden, and Matt Campbell. No mention of Matt Rhule there. So we'll see where this thing goes.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. That's for sure. But that connection between, the university and the coach with, Penn State and Rhule, and then Kraft and Rhule is obviously a factor in this conversation. And I find it darkly funny in some way that Nebraska is now ranked for the first time under Matt Rhule. They're in the top 25, and you could argue with that distinction. He's got it going, right? Like, who knows what the next several weeks entail here, but
haven't been ranked in October since 2016. And here we are today. The ranking and the firing happened almost simultaneously.
I should check that real quick. They were ranked for 2 weeks last season.
Right. In October.
In September, actually. In September.
No. I'm saying you're right. Nebraska has been ranked in September.
Correct.
It's been since 2016 when Nebraska was last ranked in the month of October.
But I said they were ranked for the first time under Rhule, and that's not true.
Oh, so, yeah. They were ranked last year to start the season. Correct.
And they were ranked briefly in 2019 as well, when Rhule was not here yet. So both of these worlds are kind of merging at the same point, and it's going to be fun.
All right, let's come back and talk some more about this on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Right now, a message from Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus powered by Peloton IQ. This is their most advanced equipment yet. So if you've got a bike, you haven't seen anything until you check this out. It's designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. The swivel screen on this machine is a game changer. You can go from running on the tread to strength training without missing a beat, and keep those personalized class recommendations. They help you stay engaged, get the workouts that are tailored to your vibe and your energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back. Connor Havard, Mitch Sherman with you here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. November 22nd, Nebraska will take a trip to Happy Valley, take on Penn State. Who knows what Nebraska's record will be? Who knows what Penn State's record will be? Penn State will almost certainly still have they'll have an interim coach at least through the remainder of this year. Nebraska might be fighting for something much, much larger. And in the middle of all of this is potentially a coach who, as we've been talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes here, is going to be right in the discussion for that job. It'll be the second most fascinating time where Nebraska's visited Penn State, dating back to the other time that, was in 21.
The other time that Penn State was all over the national news for reasons that it did not want and nobody wanted. So Penn State's schedule coming up before Nebraska comes, and this is just like a side note to this. We'll spend 10 seconds discussing this. At Iowa Saturday night. That's interesting.
Tricky.
And then at Ohio State and Indiana in Happy Valley. And then the Nittany Lions have Michigan State on the road before Nebraska comes. So Penn State at 3-3 could be 4-7, 5-6 when the Huskers go out there.
Oh man, I mean that's supposed to be a national championship contender.
Yeah, they were like the bottom for Penn State was to make the playoff this year, and the fact that they're 3-3 with consecutive losses against Northwestern and UCLA, which were considered a couple of weeks ago the two worst teams in the Big Ten. That's why this had to happen so fast. That's why Kraft said, no, we're not waiting. Like, this isn't going to work beyond December. Why would we stick with it here in October? Like, this is the new world. There's lots of things that are the new world of college football. We'd say those words a lot, like when we're talking about money and power and changing playoff systems. This is also the new world of college football, where if you're going to make a change and you have to make a change, you do it like UCLA did and Virginia Tech did, and now Penn State did. This is the biggest job opening, hands down. Probably will be the biggest job opening in this entire coaching carousel cycle, which is set to be a massive one this year if the early returns are any indication. So by November 22nd, this thing can't still be festering then, right? Like it's going to have some kind of a resolution. I suppose if Matt Rhule is going to take the job, like if it moves down the tracks, you're not going to know it on November 22nd. He's going to coach out the string and do his best to just conceal whatever he's feeling, because you can't do that to your players at Nebraska in what has the potential to be a special season. So if we get to November 22nd and we don't know something about him staying at Nebraska, you can, and we don't know all the circumstances, but at that point you can feel very nervous as a Nebraska fan if it's going well for the Huskers on the field. Can you imagine the scene of him going out there into Beaver Stadium on the other sideline if he is in any way up for that job? Like it would have been like Scott Frost coming to Nebraska at the end in November of 2017 with UCF. Like, it's a complete circus.
So here's the other thing. I mean, let's just run the string out a little bit. Let's just say Nebraska is 9-1 going into that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the argument, if you're a Penn State fan, against Rhule right now to be your candidate, to be your coach, is that he is a program builder and not necessarily a program like, I'm going to take this from a good one to a great championship contender type of program. And if Matt Rhule can jump over 2 steps this year at Nebraska and take Nebraska from a perennially good team, into being a perennial good team, also a college football playoff contender, he would have then checked your box, right? By saying,
because he didn't beat Ohio State to get there, and he lost to Michigan. Penn State has won the Big Ten championship under James Franklin. Penn State has been to the college football playoff under James Franklin and won 2 games in the college football playoff. Is there anything that Matt Rhule could do this year, even if he gets to 9-1 and has Nebraska ranked in the top 10 on November 22nd, that would impress Penn State fans? I mean, they've seen it all. They've seen better than that.
I'll say this, just put it this way. Don't you think his record, if it's still festering by that point, if it's still out there, don't you think his record matters at Nebraska this year, right? Like it has an impact.
It would get them way more excited than they are now about him. I'm not debating that, but I'm just saying there would also be a narrative like, oh, so he beat USC at home, big deal. Like we didn't get rid of a coach to find somebody who could beat USC at home. We got rid of a coach to find somebody who can beat Georgia on a neutral field in January.
But it would be like, hey, look, he turned Nebraska into a playoff team. Imagine what he could do here. And we could debate that point over, and is that really that much more impressive, or whatever it might be. But like it
James
matters.
James Franklin took Penn State from the Bill O'Brien years, which were just barely removed from the depths of the Sandusky scandal, to a Big Ten champion and a college football playoff semifinalist. Now, that took a number of years, but he was that kind of a builder. The fact remains that Matt Rhule, and I'm not making, this is not my case for Rhule to not get the job. Like, if he is deserving and he wants it and Penn State wants him, then I will be happy for him. I'm playing the role of what the Penn State fans might think about him and why I don't believe that he is the kind of fit that some in the national media are portraying him to be right off the bat. He's 2-22 against ranked teams in his career and 0-11 against AP top 10 teams. What was it that ultimately undid James Franklin before the last 2 weeks? Why did he get fired?
Not beating the really, really good teams, right? Not beating the really, really good teams. Now, let's play it out. I like this. We're just devil's advocating each other. And I'm, to be clear, like, I'm not arguing for him to take the job. I'm trying to step in the shoes of Penn State fans, much like everybody else.
For the record, I'd like to see Matt Rhule stay at Nebraska.
Yeah. It's good when Nebraska wins. Like, that's good for the state and good for podcasters and stuff like that. But like, you know, you could convince yourself, oh, well, if he wouldn't have taken the job in Carolina and he would have stayed at Baylor a couple more years, then who knows what happens there? Maybe they have a Big 12 championship or two by now, and or whatever it might be. And then, you know, doing it so quickly, taking Nebraska from disarray, I don't know, into a playoff team in 3 years is it's mighty impressive, right? It would be mighty. Now we're once again jumping way ahead here. Nebraska got to win all these games and they're all going to be close, but you know, that would be the argument.
We got him at 9-1 on November 22nd. Matt Rhule, you know, you could, in defense of his record against ranked teams, you could say that he's never coached with the kind of talent that he would have day one at Penn State. And this team that he has at Nebraska is getting close. There's probably a Baylor team there in 2018 or 19 that's comparable or slightly above what Nebraska has in terms of across the board talent. Maybe not. But he's getting close to having coached right now with the best talent that he has had as a college coach, with a 5-star quarterback and former 5-star signees who are at Nebraska out of the transfer portal. So you see it. You saw it on Saturday. We've seen it at times this season. There is talent at Nebraska. So the wins against ranked teams are going to have to start coming for him to remain somebody who's coveted, if he is at all coveted by Penn State.
And while they wouldn't really have those on their resume this year,
one chance. They're going to have one chance between now and the Penn State game.
USC. So yeah, and maybe Nebraska will get to that point still only with the one blemish, or maybe not. I mean, look, like Cignetti now has it, right? Cignetti now has the big win in his back pocket. So he like checks all of those boxes now. If
you can get Cignetti, if you're Penn State and you can get Cignetti, it's done deal. It's closed. It's closed up.
I think so. Yeah, I'm with you.
I was trying to think if I maybe misspoke there, and could UCLA plays Ohio State after Nebraska. I was thinking UCLA could back into the poll when Nebraska goes out to the Rose Bowl, but they would have to beat Ohio State to do that, and that game is a week after Nebraska. All right, well, so interested to see what Matt Rhule has to say on Monday. We will absolutely be back to assess that. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about this week. It is a game week. It is a short week for Nebraska, and we need to hit on that game because the Huskers are 5-1 and have a chance to get bowl eligible this week, Friday night at TCF Bank Stadium. Coming up next.
Couple things first. Friend of the show is Square, a friend of you as well. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that could truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it be the local sports bar, which is packed on game days, or the coffee shop that knows your order by heart. You know them, they know you. They're all run on Square. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives as well. Everybody is in their team colors on game day. You know it. It's your local neighborhood spot. And of course, many of them run on Square, like the Mill in Lincoln or 402 Creamery or the Cookie Company at Gateway Mall. They all use Square, and certainly they are not alone. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite local neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. And a word from FanDuel, where the NFL season is here and college football season is here as well. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So whether it be anytime touchdown scorers on Sunday, I always like the idea of taking my fantasy guys that are going to maybe make me happy or disappoint me on Sundays, and then just throwing a little action on them to score an anytime touchdown. That way you get double the win on Sunday. You could do that or hedge your bets. Some people that you're playing against in fantasy football, whatever your strategy may be, it's there for you. There is your traditional spreads and over-unders. There's plenty to find in futures as well on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The live betting feature is fantastic as well. It is an easy way to add a little bit more energy to your weekends. So download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com and place that first $5 bet today.
All right, welcome back. Sunday night, Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Matt Rhule will speak to the media today, normal time on this Monday around 11:30 a.m. They are well into game preparations. The Huskers have a condensed week, but they're not doing anything different on a day-by-day part of this preparation for Minnesota. What they will do basically is take the Thursday practice, which is the lightest practice of the week, and eliminate that. So Sunday, as normal, after Nebraska returned Saturday night from Maryland, was a work day, a practice day. Today, Monday or tomorrow, Monday, whenever you're listening to this, is a day off from the practice field. Tuesday, Wednesday, they'll still practice heavy. And then Thursday, that will be a walkthrough and travel day up to Minneapolis. So Nebraska opens as a 6.5-point favorite against the Gophers. National TV for this one, Friday night on Fox. If I were to say to you, what at any given point in the college football season, or at one particular point in the college football season, do USC, Texas, Utah, Cincinnati, and Nebraska have in common? Where might you have gone with that back in August?
Let's see here. So name those teams again. Texas, Utah.
Texas, USC, Utah, Cincinnati, and Nebraska.
I don't know. Ranked in the top 15 or something like that, I would have said.
They all entered the poll, or in the case of a couple of them, re-entered the poll at the same time in 1 week, which was today, Sunday, in college football. So Nebraska's week 1 opponent, Cincinnati, checks in at number 24. I heard from some people who don't understand the poll today who said, how is it?
Would they ever find, if only there was ever a way where they could find out who is better between Cincinnati and Nebraska? I swear to God, if I hear that sentence one more time,
you're going to hear it. Nebraska's also ranked 2 spots ahead of Michigan in the poll. Can you believe that? Did those people even see the game? They played each other. So it's 60 voters, people, and their votes accumulate, and they compile these together and add the points so that there isn't one person out there. Maybe there's one person, but it's not one person putting this together. Also, you're basing this off of 6 games at this point, not one. So lots of reasons why you might have a team that lost to a team ranked below that team that was the loser in the head-to-head, as is the case here. But Texas is back in. Nebraska's November opponent, USC, jumps back in at number 20, and Utah, after an overtime win that I watched in my hotel in Washington, D.C., is in the poll.
Got a fascinating game this week. I mean, Nebraska does not have a good recent history against Minnesota.
No, never beaten PJ Fleck. Never beaten PJ up there.
Yep, they lost 5 times in a row now. And it's, there's a lot on the line for for both teams, of course, but you're looking at it from the Nebraska side, who's ranked and got a chance to win. I mean, I don't know how people up there feel about this team, Minnesota, but I mean, they certainly do things in a little bit of a different way than they have been over the last several years. Like, it's sort of, you were maybe thinking going into this game, oh man, it's going to be one of those, rough and tough, type of games. Minnesota, not very successful with the run this year. They have a good back, Ijiboy, who is a good player, but not exactly getting their yards that way. Drake Lindsey, their quarterback, has done a pretty nice job this year, and they kind of just find a way. They're 4-2 with the losses to Cal and Ohio State at this point, so they're probably on schedule, maybe slightly off with the loss to Cal, but they got stuff in front of them as well. So it's a fascinating game on a short week with a lot of history, and then all this other stuff that is surrounding the game.
Yeah, that little number next to Nebraska's name this week probably isn't doing the Huskers any favors as they go up there on the road. It's going to fire up Minnesota a bit and say they're going to act disrespected. The Huskers have been owned by Minnesota in recent years, and Minnesota is not getting the same respect as Nebraska. Now, granted, the Gophers have a worse record than Nebraska, but did win on Saturday against Purdue in a game where the Boilers put up 456 yards of offense against Minnesota's defense. So this is not probably the kind of defense for Minnesota that Nebraska is accustomed to seeing. That's generally been the strength. I think defense, just like hard-nosed run-stopping defense, and then outstanding wide receiver play has been the calling card for Minnesota, at least in games against Nebraska under PJ Fleck. And this team is built a little bit different. Than maybe in much the opposite way than some of those teams. There is Coy Parrish, who's a dynamic player, a two-way player, yep. DB and wide receiver from the state of Minnesota, who was recruited by Ohio State and teams of that stature. So Lindsey will be the third freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. So the third freshman, not a true freshman like Bryce Underwood and Malik Washington, but a third freshman in 4 Big Ten games to face this Nebraska defense. He's thrown for just over 200 yards a game and completing 60% of his throws, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he's been serviceable. He's been good. I would say of all the quarterbacks that Nebraska's faced this year, you on paper would slot him behind Sorsby. You'd slot him behind Underwood, behind Aiden Childs, and in some ways behind Malik Washington. So, we'll see if the Black Shirts can take advantage of that.
Yeah, he's a good player. I mean, I'm interested in. So Nebraska's gone, played 2 games that are not been at home, 1 true road game this past weekend against Maryland, and in both cases, the one case in Kansas City, obviously it's like it's 60,000 Nebraska fans. On Saturday at Maryland, Maryland's having troubles communicating with the sideline late in the game because the Nebraska fans have overtaken it. This is usually a game that's very, very well attended by Nebraska fans on a Friday night. With a little number next to them, I imagine there will be a lot of people making the trek up I-35 for this game. But it brings out the best in Minnesota fans as well. So curious to see what it sounds like and what it looks like in there on Friday night. But it'll probably be the most hostile game that Nebraska played in so far.
Yeah, which is very, there has been very little hostility. Yes. None in Kansas City, and it was limited, extremely limited in College Park on Saturday. So this one doesn't need. There's not a high bar to meet for Minnesota to present the most hostile environment that Nebraska has seen, and then the next road game for Nebraska is at UCLA, which depending on where the Bruins season continues to skyrocket, still it's not going to be a hostile environment. And then Penn State, that's the other road game. So amazing. We don't know. That's the total wild card. We do not know. They might be cheering for Nebraska in that game for all we know.
Think about that. I mean, Nebraska play 5 road games, and basically none of them will be hostile compared to Penn State will certainly
It'll be the least hostile Penn State environment that you will ever encounter.
Yeah, like the most docile version of Penn State fans that we maybe have ever seen. So like this will sometimes you need some breaks that way, and Nebraska's got one in terms of their schedule for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can't wait for Monday. Very much an anticipated day. I'm sure it'll be highly attended by Nebraska media, and Matt Rhule knows what he's walking into. We'll be interested to see if he just comes armed with something to say about James Franklin and Penn State, or if the questions have to come from the media. If they do, they will, and he will have things to say, and then he'll have more to say on his podcast this week, and he'll have more to say when he talks to Pat McAfee. He can't escape it. He put himself into this situation where he talks about transparency and openness and not wanting to hide from subjects. Well, here you go. Here's a subject that you probably wouldn't like to have to address head on, because no coaches do in this spot, but he's going to do it.
Yep, he's going to have to. Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten with Craig, and you could find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.